Welcome back to the Backwards History Podcast. As always, I'm your host, Will, here with my co-host, Kevin. Say hi, Kevin.
Hi, Kevin.
Shut up, Kevin.
Don't mind him, folks. He just hopped up on disinfectant.
I've been huffing the Lysol fumes, folks. Quarantine's going to my head. As you can tell, we're still recording remotely, so forgive the sound degradation. Hopefully here in the next couple weeks, we will be back in the studio together and these sound quality issues will go away. But in the meantime, please don't forget to go check us out on all of the socials, the Insta, the Facebook, the Twitter. And we've got a contest. We're announcing it today. Mm-hmm. Find out the rules by going and emailing us at backwardshistorypodcast@gmail.com. We've got some great prizes. We'll explain those probably next week. But just go shoot us an email and we will send them back to you. And then we will be announcing the winners on our 50th episode, because this one's number 45. Our 50th episode will mark 1 year that we've been recording the podcast. And we wanted to give you guys a little bit of something for that, making it a great year. But yeah, this episode is going to be what we want to coin it. I don't think we're going to label the episode this title, but this is the Quarantine Rants.
It could turn into a series if we're not careful.
God, I fear that we'd be stuck in this mode for too long, that there'd be too many Quarantine Rants. But the time we've gotten to just sit around and have nothing to do has given us a unique amount of time to take in a lot of what's out on the internet, see a lot of the stupidity going on the internet.
Oh, Lord.
Some of it's current, but some of it's stuff that's been floating around for a while out there, and we just happened to notice it because of some current posts. Mm-hmm. We're not going to name names. Yet. We might, but I don't think we'll do it on this episode. But there's another podcast out there, roughly been recording about the same amount of time as us, maybe a few months more, that has been basically violating one of our key points of why we did this. And that was the battle misinformation. And to basically get people to think, not think like us, just think. And we saw a post. Well, I didn't see it. Kevin saw the post that irked him. Bad. And then before he could show me the post, it was taken down, or that podcast response was at least taken down to where we couldn't find the link to it. And then I went and listened to episodes that they had done that were on the same token, and we've got a little bit of a problem with it. But I'm going to let Kevin take over since he started this whole conversation.
Thank you, Will. As Will said, most of us in the world find ourselves with a lot of extra free time now. And one thing that I've been trying to fill my extra time with is reading and research. Being the historian of the group, that's something when my busy lifestyle's going, I don't get to read as much. But I was on Twitter. We're always trying to promote what we love, communicate with everybody. Our last episode was a fan suggestion, and so we're always trying to interact more, get feedback and all.
Well, I'd say listener suggestion. I don't want to be pompous enough to think we have fans. We have listeners. They may just be writing down everything they hate about us every time they listen. But they're listening. They're listening.
Fans, listeners, whatever you call yourself. All I'm going to say is thank you, for listening.
Yes, thank you.
But I got into history because when I was younger, I was told a lot of things that just weren't true. They weren't remotely wrong or anything. They were just completely wrong. It wasn't like someone missed a date telling me something or this, that, or whatever. They just straight lied to me and used it under the guise of history And so that was one thing that really got me to, start to think for myself, start to do my own research and form my own opinions. And when we started this podcast, that was my main goal, was to try to enlighten others with the goal of just learn to think on your own. You don't have to agree with everything I say, but if you can form your own opinion, that's great because you're not being told what to believe. But I was doing my Twitter rounds, as I like to call them, and one historical uh, I don't know, oddity that keeps coming up is about the Confederate flag, air quotes there,
which we've discussed already
at
several
length.
times.
And I won't rehash that whole episode. Go back and check it out. But it was this video of a guy just hauling the truck. Truck was broke down. He was just hauling it. And on one side he was flying the current U.S. flag, and on the other side, what's been come to known as the Confederate flag. And this woman just gets out of her car, runs up to it, and snatches it down and runs off with it. And I was like, well, that's just thievery right there. You just stole that dude's property because you didn't agree with it. And then I start to think a little more. Hold on, infringing on his First Amendment right. So I started reading the comments below it, and I'm used to people not understanding the complex history of the Civil War. And again, this was covered in our previous episode on the matter. But people were saying things like, "Oh, that's patriotic," oh, and things like that. Like, that's not patriotic. You just infringed upon his First Amendment right.
Let's preface, even though I'm quoting myself from that episode, slavery bad. That's the
Yes,
official opinion of the Backwards History Podcast. Slavery bad, regardless of what we say in the section.
right.
Slavery bad.
Yes,
So that nobody wants to misquote me like they have other people, but we'll get back to
right,
that later on in the
right.
episode.
Yes.
Slavery equals bad.
Thank you, Will.
Okay.
And yes, slavery in any form is atrocious and it needs to be abolished. Anyway, back on what I was saying before Will kind of came in there. Make sure I didn't get railroaded by people on the internet. Appreciate that.
I got your back.
That's right, partner. But I was reading these comments. At first, I was just going to read them because I think they're kind of funny how people who don't know history will parade themselves around like they do. And then I started to realize that the podcast that shall remain unnamed at the moment was the one who had shared the video, but there had been some comments put on there of the podcast Twitter account condoning what these people were doing. And there was one particular comment like, "Oh, that's very patriotic. You're a great American." And I'm like, and it was liked by the podcast that shared it, and I'm like, that's not patriotic. Again, you're stomping on one of his rights that's guaranteed by Constitution. And so I started doing a little more research, and to not go into too great a detail on everything because it was a bit much. History is being misrepresented by this particular history-based podcast in an attempt to garner more listeners on what is a very popular historical misconception of what that flag represents and what the Civil War was about. To our dedicated listeners, one of my pet peeves is looking through historical events through a modern lens. You can't study something that happened 200 years ago with a 21st century understanding because people 200 years ago don't think the way we did. And one of the things that really, really irks me is the dumbing down of history, where we take these insanely complicated events and we try to get it down to just a few bullet points. and you lose so much understanding of what these events really were and the people involved, how they were affected, and their thought process, and you just get it down to good, bad, right, wrong, winners, losers, and you lose essentially the human element of what history is all about. And I've always felt that history is the collective story of humanity. It's it's our story, and by trying to garner listeners for your particular podcast by misrepresenting this and trying to cash in on one of them, hot topic debates or issues, and not presenting the actual facts of what's going on to try and help people understand this and educate them. That's what really irked me. And when Will and I were discussing, we were having our production meeting. We were talking about what do we want to do this episode on. I immediately brought this up because it upset me so bad that someone is passing off being a historic or a history expert, if you will, and you're just telling people what they want to hear so they'll listen to you.
From what I can tell, it's not worked out too well for him. Of course, that's off of a very narrow view of what his listenership may or may not be. So it
Right.
may be more than what I can see, but it doesn't look like it's working out too well for him.
Right. It just reminds me on Anchorman 2 when they're like, why can't we just tell people what they want to hear instead of what they need to hear? And it's like that aha moment of, oh, okay, that's how I get people to listen to my news segment is I'm just going to tell them what they want to hear, not
Well,
what they need to hear. Right.
what irritated me the most after Kevin told me this, I actually sat down and um, listened. He's got 3 episodes dealing with different portions of the Civil War, and it was pre, during, and post. I believe was basically
Yeah.
the summarized version of what they were about. And I got to listen to 2 out of the 3, or most of 2 out of the 3. And what irritated me the most about it is part of his tagline of who he is that he's a history teacher. And he frames the entire episode like he's teaching textbook. Like this is how it happened start to finish. Very very direct with when things happened, what happened, talking about documents and blah blah blah. But there was one instance he was reading a letter from one person to another about a particular subject, and he got partially into the letter and says, "Okay, I'm not going to read the rest of it because I'm rolling my eyes too much." Without even getting far enough into the letter to give the full breadth of information to everyone that was listening, but then interjecting his personal opinion when he's framed this all as a history lesson. History lesson does not get your political view put into it. It is a history lesson like we do. We give you information. I'm not saying we're experts and we're giving you 100% of every topic we talk about, but we want you to form your own opinion. We're not trying to give you the opinion we want you to have. Or
Right.
I'm trying to give you the opinion that I want you to have of something, but I don't want to force it to you. But him being a history teacher, if he's in the grade school system, then that's par for the course. Because you know that they typically do that.
Oh yeah. I've had many history teachers over the years. I can attest to that fact.
But you can tell the way he does it, it's all like it's scripted. And then
Right.
I can't finish this. I'm rolling my eyes right now. I can't even give you the full information you need to make an informed opinion.
Right.
That's a little self-serving.
A
If
little
you're going to
bit.
frame yourself like a historian teaching history, then teach the history, not your opinion.
And that's what just irked me was just I'm gonna do what I have to so people will listen to me.
And on top of that, he's wrong because he framed the pre-Civil War era of the United States like it was already split north-south, where the North, every single person in the North was anti-slavery, and every single person in the South was pro-slavery. When in actuality, it's very much like the United States today when it comes to, say, gun rights. They're
Right.
everywhere. People pro and against are everywhere. We live in Mississippi. I have arguments on Facebook on a daily basis about gun
It's
rights.
true. He does.
I do. It's fun for me because most people can't argue, but I digress.
They certainly, devolved to name calling with you fairly
Oh,
quickly.
that's my favorite thing. My favorite thing. There's three things I love. I love ad hominem attacks.
Hmm.
I love name calling, and I love getting blocked.
Oh,
If you
that's
do any of those things to me, you're not hurting me.
you're just letting
You're
him know he
making
won.
right. You're making my day.
Uh, talk about gun rights. I mean, that's always a hot topic issue. And you're right. You do have those for and against, but just like on any spectrum, you have so many people in between those two extremes.
Right.
And by saying everyone is either this or that when it comes to any topic anywhere, it's just wrong.
That's
It
like
really,
saying 1776 America. Every person in the colonies was anti, British rule and wanted everybody out. No, you had what were called Tories, people who were pro British rule in the colonies even after they lost.
oh yeah, you have those. You have it breaks down, and most historians agree into thirds. Those for British rule, those against it, and then a third who just didn't really care.
And the same happens with slavery.
Yes. Like I say, that really kind of highlights my point of when it's either this or that, you lose that whole spectrum of other people, and they're just completely lost in the discussion. And that's how a lot of wrong opinions and understandings get formed.
Speaking of wrong opinions and understandings, let's talk about something a little bit more
Recent.
present day, more recent. Y'all heard our little quip about Lysol and disinfectant at the beginning of this, and I'm assuming that if you're listening to this, you know exactly where I'm going.
Yeah.
What is the deal with the gotcha culture in this country right now? Someone says something.
Hmm.
People are so desperate to find something to say, "Oh, you're dumb, haha,"
Right.
that they grasp at straws that aren't even there, and then when you point it out, they will literally take the quote, post it, and be like, "See, there's nothing to argue about. He said it."
Mm.
And it's right there in front of you that it's not what he said. We're talking about Trump saying that he wanted to do or wanted to see if we could do something, some
I'm
air
saying.
quotes, something like being able to put use something like disinfectant that would kill the virus quickly, or the light therapy, because that was the second part of it. And he said something like there was something like in between. But dear God, the media
Oh, they spun
and
that one hard.
the liberal universe
You-
minds exploded in rainbow like the SpongeBob meme, imagination,
Oh
because they
yeah,
thought they had something.
they thought they
And
had a good.
like I literally had an argument today with somebody. I said I put the definition of something on Facebook, and they posted, or no, this is before I put the definition of something. They posted the quote word for word. And he said, "See, he said it. There's no argument." It's like he didn't say it.
He didn't.
Something.
He didn't say.
It's like you're literally looking at the quote that says you're wrong, and yet you're still prancing around like you're right. How does that work?
Just a breakdown in critical thinking skills. And
It's ugh,
this isn't even a critical thinking issue. Like it's either he said it or he didn't. And clearly, if you watch the tape, he didn't.
right. And on top of that, I mean, we're not Trump supporters necessarily here. We see good and bad with every president that has come and gone from this country, except for George. I see you over there. Little George is sitting over here on the corner of the desk looking at me.
They check yourself, son.
Right? We like George. That's about it. But this is, unless I'm mistaken, this is the most frequent and, this is the most public appearances any president ever has made in this short of a period of time in the history of the country.
I think you could be right that way.
It's almost like daily.
Just about.
While we've been dealing with this CV-19 crap.
Which, it's kind of like that you want to see your leader there or hear him, like kind of with FDR in the fireside chat, help get people through the Great Depression and all. That constant reassurance that you have leadership in place working for you, or air quotes there on that one.
But wanting new information or a new answer to everything every 24 hours is impossible.
It just can't be done.
But he's expected to give people new information or new how we're getting out of this or what we're doing every 24 hours. That's barely enough time to even figure it out.
Right. I mean, this is
I would be losing my mind right about now.
And this, as since we're all going through this together, this whole pandemic, this whole situation, it's ever evolving. I mean, it's constantly changing. And, different things are being tried, different, people, businesses, everything trying to operate within certain guidelines and boundaries, but it really is a day-by-day kind of approach because we don't really have a whole lot of history to go off of this.
And some of them boundaries are pretty out there. There was one governor that's quoted to have said, and this one was not a misquote. This was a quote, and I'm not going to quote it word for word because I don't have it in front of me, but basically talking about shutting down this particular set of gun stores or gun stores in general. And it said, basically, while we recognize your right to keep and bear arms, we don't recognize it as a right.
I still don't understand what she's trying to say.
Exactly. So there's no logic to that statement whatsoever. How you can recognize a right and not recognize a right in the same breath.
I mean, has there been any follow up from that since she said it?
Not that I've seen. And if we're gonna give Trump the benefit of the doubt, granted, there's a little bit more benefit of the doubt on his part because there were other words in there.
Right.
Hers was, I'm not saying I quoted it 100% correctly, but when I read the quote, it was a direct contradiction of itself.
Right.
And I haven't seen a retraction or clarification or anything.
Like some kind of statement to follow that up. But all right, perhaps my first statement was a bit unclear.
Yeah, so
I'd clarify some things, y'all.
I want to give this individual the benefit of the doubt. Granted, they did close gun stores, so there's not a whole lot of benefit of the doubt to be there. So apparently they don't recognize it as a right. So I don't know. Or an essential right, maybe. Right. Heck, North Carolina said that protesting isn't an essential activity, but it's the First Amendment.
It was so essential that they put it first.
Right.
Quite literally, it's the first one.
The first one.
You can't miss it.
You know how we are.
Yep.
We don't want you to take our word for anything. We don't want you to take anything we say as fact. We don't want you to think that we're experts at all. We're just two dudes, usually with one microphone.
Not just that.
We want you to do your own research, form your own opinions, trust, but verify.